Well, another thing, Ashley, that needs to be fixed is Asia Wilson needs a signature shoe. Point blank and period. This week, Caitlin Clark made like waves in sports, of all the sports, not just women's sports, when there was an announcement that she was going to sign a blockbuster shoe deal. It's said to be about $28 million, and it includes a signature shoe. Now, nobody is saying that she doesn't deserve the shoe or should have the shoe. She absolutely should. But a lot of people are calling for Asia Wilson to have one, who deserves one. And they're saying that it is absolutely crazy that she doesn't have one. There's been a lot of discourse. I know I saw you tweeted about it. And I just wanted to know, like, what do you think about all of this conversation around Asia Wilson not having a signature shoe?
I mean, I would go back even further and say before we get to her, it was a travesty to me that Skylar Diggins never had a signature shoe. I mean, I remember when Skylar Diggins was in college, how she had everybody going crazy, whether you watched women's basketball or not. I mean, I had cousins and homeboys that were like, I love Scott. Drake was like rocking her jersey. She had Lil Wayne showing up to games. Like, Skylar Diggins was that girl. And the fact that she never had a signature shoe is mind-boggling to me, because I feel like she was one of the first to really like get people who were not watching the W, were not interested in women's basketball, getting their eyes there. The whole Drake thing when she kissed him on the cheek and he like, oh my God, like she had the boys going crazy. So you want to talk about marketability, Skylar Diggins was, and to me is still that girl. So I think that there's so many different tiers to this, right? Because I took marketing in college. It was one of my like undergrad type things, one of my minors rather. And nobody's saying that Caitlin Clark doesn't deserve a signature shoe. And when you really understand business and marketing, companies like to tap into moments. They like to tap into, you know, popularity in that moment. And they also like to tap into the perceived longevity of a moment. So with Caitlin Clark, not only is she the moment right now, but there's a perceived longevity that she will be the moment for X amount of years to come, which then helps Nike sell more shoes, right? So not arguing that, not debating that. I think anybody who understands how brands and brand deals and things like that work can understand that. Even if you go to NIL, there's a reason she was getting so many opportunities in college, because she is the moment. But I think that when we talk about the moment, you also have to look how we got to that moment. And how we got to that moment was on the backs and the work of a lot of other women that came before her. Now, when we have this conversation, it's a little bit deeper than just, oh, who's more popular. It has been shown in the way that deals have been approached to female athletes, women athletes versus men, that they perceive certain women to be more marketable than others. And you can talk about this across the board. I remember we were having this conversation years ago about Serena and Maria Sharapova. Serena was the better athlete. She had the better accolades. She was a GOAT. But Maria had a lot of the high fashion deals. She had a lot of the beauty brand deals because she was perceived to be more marketable. And if that is the truth, which it kind of looks like it is, that they deem a certain look to be more marketable, then we need to have that conversation as to why. So I think two things can be true. Caitlin Clark can be very deserving of everything that she has. And I think she's very deserving of having a signature shoe because, again, she is the moment in what she has done for women's basketball, specifically this year. But one, she hasn't done it alone. And two, there's a direct line of correlation between what brands think is marketable in terms of look and why certain athletes, especially when it comes to women's sports, are able to go ahead and capitalize on that versus others. So two things can be true at the same time, and they are.
Yeah, but let's talk about marketability, okay? I broke this all down and I'm just going to read it because I really want her accolades to be shown. Asia Wilson, New York Times bestsellers list for Dear Black Girls, okay? Marketable. If you're on a New York Times bestseller list, you are marketable because people are buying up those books for a reason, okay? First female athlete to sign with Ruffles. Two-time WNBA champion, two-time MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year winner, 5-time All-Star, And she also headlined the Cosmic Unity sneaker line for Nike, which went off the shelves, like sold like hotcakes, like crazy. And she also had her own LeBron 2 player exclusive that were both of them were widely purchased. So I don't know how much more marketable you would want a player to be than to be that. Also, in the WNBA, it's 70% Black. Let's be clear. And to not have a Black woman have a signature shoe is crazy. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I
And,
mean, when you look at the NBA, right? I use them as an example because not every player in the NBA who has a signature shoe is at the same tier, right? You have players like CJ McCollum who have a signature shoe. He's not LeBron James, and the list goes on and on. So while yes, there will be more, there are shoes that are more popular because of the player that they are attached to, and being popular with a certain demographic of people doesn't make you universally popular. And I'm definitely not arguing that. Again, that goes back to basic marketing. You look at more of a universal appeal versus a singular demographic appeal. But with that said, if you use the NBA, not all of those players have a universal appeal. Not all of them are universally known and admired the same way. So if it's a conversation where Nike, just playing devil's advocate here, if Nike says, well, Caitlin Clark, Stewie, and Sabrina are more universally marketable for reasons that we don't need to dive into, we know what they are, right? Then fair, but that does not mean there's not a market, there's not a fan base, and there aren't people who will support a signature shoe for women who do not look like them. So there is a market, there is a corner for everyone. Nobody's arguing that maybe Caitlin Clark has more of a universal appeal right now because of the moment, and people are prisoners of, have regency bias. They're prisoners of the moment right now, right? So I'm not arguing that. Maybe she appeals to a younger demographic. You kind of can relate this to a Beyonce Taylor Swift situation, right? Taylor Swift has a more universal appeal. Her demographic of her fan base is drastically wider than Beyonce, but that's because Beyonce is really only gearing herself at this point in her career to a certain age group. That doesn't mean that what Beyonce sells isn't going to sell like Taylor Swift. It just means it sells to a different group of people. So I say all that to say, just because one may not sell the same way doesn't mean it's not marketable, and doesn't mean it's not profitable. It's just marketable and profitable in a different way, but it should still be put on the shelves because there is still a demand for it and there's still a desire for it.
There's definitely desire, but it needs to be fixed no matter what.
For
I
sure.
mean, there's so many layers as to why you say somebody is marketable versus them not being. I mean, the last time that a Black player had a signature shoe was Candace Parker with Adidas in 2011. And before that, I believe it was Cheryl Swoops, like 20 years before that had it. And I know I wore them shoes out. Okay.
And Lisa Leslie, didn't Lisa Leslie have a
she
shoe?
did have a shoe, but I'm saying prior to Candace, that was the shoe that was out. And I know I personally wore a hole in the bottom of both of them shoes. Okay. And I know that, Asia, since we're talking about Asia, she's the face of the league. She dang near deserved the shoe in college. Okay. So you can't say that she doesn't deserve it. And the fact that people are saying that it's marketability is absolutely false. So you're going to have to come up with another lie, as far as I'm concerned. But my whole thing is give her what she is due, what she has earned. And also, you're going to sell out of those shoes. So why aren't you doing it?
Yeah, I think
it's the argument about your pocket.
The argument about signature shoes is that, by bare minimum, just generalize the argument, without going into details of who's more marketable, it should be a reflection of the league it represents. Just like when we talk about the men's side, it's a reflection of the league it represents. You have Black athletes who have shoes. You have international European athletes who have signature shoes. You kind of have guys in the middle of, the road who have signature shoes. And yes, again, not every shoe is as popular. LeBron's, Kobe's, and KD's are a lot more popular than, Devin Booker's shoe, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is coming out with it. Like, it's different tiers, but that it's a reflection of the league. The top players get shoes, and then you let the chips kind of fall where they may. So it's not taking away from Caitlin. She's very much deserving of this moment because of what she is at this moment in time and what she can be. But that doesn't take away from the fact that there have been other players who have also been very instrumental in getting us to this point that deserve a shoe based on what they have done in the sport in which they play. And if we're going to go ahead and award someone who hasn't done anything and we're doing it just based on what she's done collegiately, what she's done for the sport right now and moment in popularity and perceived longevity, fine, love it. I'm not mad at it. Get your coin, sis. But we also have to look at what's already been done. And I think that's where kind of the bumping of the heads is coming into play when we talk about this, when we have this conversation.